management consultant. I'm the president of Metaspire Consulting. And the intention of the webinar is for me just to share what I learned across my travels and through personal development. It's also a chance, and I've said this in the previous webinar, for me to selfishly learn from you and to remind myself of what I've learned, of course. So can you see my screen? I just want to make sure. Okay, good. Okay. Okay, so this webinar is going to be about how to be impeccable with our word. It's based on the 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz and other fun resources, which kind of complement each other very well. So in the short amount of time, I'm going to attempt to create a stronger awareness of the words we say, and how can we receive words that others speak in a more positive way. And lastly, how can we learn to live by words of truth and detach from limiting beliefs? Let me go ahead and go on to the next slide here. So when we slow down to hear what our inner dialogue or our inner monologue is saying, that's the chance that we have to rediscover a greater awareness of what our words and thoughts are doing. Are they ones that are encouraging us, or are they ones that are depreciating us? Only you know what you're thinking. Only I know what I'm thinking. So the good news is that we're the ones that can change our thoughts if and when we want to. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to try to rush through, but not. If I go too fast, just tell me, okay? Okay, so be impeccable with your words. So let's just start with what are words. So in technical terms, words are vibrational sounds that have a tendency to manifest themselves in physical equivalents. So what does that mean in simple terms? Well, we heard this when we were little, garbage in, garbage out, right? Or maybe we've seen, cartoons when we were little where words were like magic, they were spells. And in essence, there's a lot of truth to that. The words or the misuse of words can create circumstances to happen. So imagine if the words we speak are like bricks. If we build and seal our words as bricks and we live inside those bricks, if they're positive words, they can become our safe haven and a beautiful safe place. On the flip side, if we continue to believe words that do not serve us, they become our own prison. So let's talk about what impeccability means. In this book, The 4 Agreements, the author talks about impeccability being without sin. And a sin is anything, the author says, that we do that goes against ourselves. We go against ourselves when we shame, judge, and blame ourselves unnecessarily. So being impeccable means taking responsibility for ourselves and our actions, and the key is to do so without shame, blame, and guilting ourselves into it. Our words internally and externally create a desire for action. That doesn't mean we act, it just means it creates a desire. So we're going to talk a little bit about what the words are that we might have heard when we're little and how those words may have become our beliefs in the next slide. So in the next slide you're going to see a circle here. And it goes around. You can see the words become thoughts. And sometimes that happens so fast we think we don't even know we thought something, we just feel it. And those continual words and those continual thoughts and those continual feelings become beliefs. And then those beliefs become actions. So as children, you can see here, we didn't have the opportunity to choose our beliefs. We agreed with the information that was passed to us or we didn't. Now we have the opportunity as adults to consider something. I want you to think about something you might have heard when you were a child, either positive or negative. So I'm going to give you an example of that in a minute, but just think about that while we're going through that slide. In the book, The 4 Agreements, the author talks about a mother that had a daughter whom she adored and loved very much. One night, the mother came home from a bad day at work, and she had a terrible headache and wanted peace and quiet, but her daughter was singing and jumping around happily. Angrily, the mother looked at the daughter and said, "Shut up, you have an ugly voice." And after that, as you could suspect, her daughter no longer sang because she believed her voice was ugly. When we hear an opinion as adults, we can think about that opinion as truth for that person, but that doesn't mean that it's true for us. Now we have the lovely opportunity of going back and recreating some of these beliefs. and revisiting the ones that really do serve us. So it's a great opportunity. In any case, I want to just say that in something you probably already know, that repeated words can change our thoughts, and those repeated thoughts become beliefs. So the only thing that can break limiting beliefs are new words that create a new agreement based on the truth. So let's talk about what is truth. In the book, Loving What Is, 4 Questions That Will Change Your Life, there's 4 questions that we can ask ourselves. When something's impacting us or affecting us somehow, something doesn't feel right, or we're upset about something, these are the 4 questions that the author challenges us to do. It's simple, but not necessarily easy. The first one is this: is it true? In the previous example, we talked about a young girl being happy and singing. She was too young to know that her mother's words were not the truth, but they were words from her mother's perspective, which came out in reaction to her mother's own headache. But second, how can we know these words are true? And third, how do we react when we believe that those words are true? And lastly, who would I be without that thought? I shared the story about this young girl singing because I related to it. My mother told me I could never sing a cappella when I was younger. So I didn't even try. I didn't even try for years until I was old enough to ask myself, do I believe that I can't sing a cappella? Is that true? To which I replied to myself, I don't know. I've never tried. So if you're wondering, I can sing a cappella. I gave myself a chance, and maybe it's not true for you, but it's just this process that I'm trying to describe here. Everybody's words are mirrors. So if somebody says something and we have a reaction to it, if we take those words and we look in ourselves, we have to see if they're true for us. And that's why you see on this slide a little girl and a young woman looking in the mirror. We have to recognize, is that something that's really true? Okay. So oftentimes we take on these roles. I remember one time my dad was yelling at my sister, and my mom said, go tell him to stop, which is crazy that my mother said that, but she said it nonetheless. And so I took on this really unhealthy role with my sister because I believed that it was my job to stop my father from yelling at her. So we're going to talk a little bit about the roles that we play based on the words that we heard and our beliefs. This is known by some psychologists called the drama triangle. You may or may not be familiar with it. There's 3 points, obviously, to a triangle. And the first one is villain. And the villain's always saying, who's to blame? Somebody has to be to blame. And these aren't roles that we stick in. We can move around, and depending on who we're with, these roles may come out more than others, and especially being an assistant. There's one particular role, when I get to it, I'm sure, that you'll say, oh, that's my job, but it's not really. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. In any case, the first one's the villain. And sometimes when we're not in a healthy mindset, we can do that. If my boss just chewed me out or my employee chewed me out, I could choose to go in reaction mode and tell that person exactly what I'm thinking, thus becoming the villain. Or, you'll see the second one here, I can go, why me? What did I do to deserve this? Which is a constant thing I say to myself. The third one is a hero. And this is the one that I say I really believe as assistants. It's almost that people think that this is what we're supposed to be doing. But let's talk through this a bit. So it's typical that we want to help others. You would never have selected being an assistant if you didn't want to help somebody. You'd be a scientist or something in a lab. It just wouldn't be the person. That wouldn't be what you would choose. So we have an opportunity here to ask ourselves, am I really helping this person? Or am I making a difference for them to help themselves? Is this really part of my job description? I think that those are good questions to ask. And I don't know the answers because I don't know the circumstance. But those are good questions for us, right? So especially during the holidays when we're around our loved ones, we have the opportunity to assess which of these roles that we play, around whom and when. And we have to think through these things before the next circumstance occurs. So we are really in a good spot right now before the holidays. So I'm going to talk about some steps to get out of these 3 roles. In this next slide, drama, it says here, drama steals productivity, time from our workplace. We know that. There's 2 ways to get out of villain, hero, or victim. and this was written by Alice Amos. She's a local psychologist and facilitator of P3 South Florida. And she introduces self-responsibility and self-love as the way out. So when I say that, self-love and self-responsibility, those things may mean something to you now, and they may mean something to you different the next time you hear it. But I want to talk a little bit about what words might help us take self-responsibility and what words might help us to love ourselves better. So here you see two columns, self-responsibility on one side and self-love on the other. These are the lists I wrote, but you obviously can write your own, and I have some resources in the back that you can steal from, or, you know, they're free, so it's not really stealing, but you can take and write the list of your own. The author of the 4 agreements actually challenged us to make a list of 4 things that we tell ourselves every day, or almost every day, and review those 4 things to see whether those words are kind and loving. So some of the things I say are, oh my God, that was so stupid. Or, I'm getting too old for this. Or, that person is a pain in the neck. And, you know, it's probably not surprising that I have pain in my neck because I say it all the time. What if I changed my internal words to some of these things? How important is this to me? Do I want to be right or do I want to be happy? Wherever I go, there I am. So if I can only change myself, I really have to focus on this, even though it's much, sometimes, I'm not saying not to blow off steam, but sometimes it's much easier just to blame the other person and then get them out of our life. And then 5 minutes later, guess what? Another person comes around just similar, right? Because we never really addressed it in ourselves. In the self-love category or column, there are some things that people said about me that I didn't really believe, and I had to write them down. And some of the things are I'm kind and I'm generous and I'm creative. Some of the slogans you'll see are from 12-step programs there. You know, when I do feel afraid, sometimes I beat myself up for it because I should be beyond this and I'm mature. I have all these beliefs, right, and rules. But fear, the acronym for fear is false evidence appearing real. And, you know, I have to remind myself that I'm doing the best I can. If I knew better, I would do better. And the bottom line is I'm learning. So the important thing to remember here is that our subconscious does not have logic. So by repeating positive things to ourselves, even if we don't believe it at the time, eventually, by repetition, the positive thoughts will enter our subconscious and become a part of our internal speech. We cannot do anything to stop our thoughts if we don't take the time to slow down. And in our society, sometimes that's difficult, but of course, again, it's the holidays, so let's take time to slow down and be silent. And here we have the next slide that talks about the gift of silence. How can we take care of ourselves? Well, sometimes these things, like I said earlier, they happen so fast. We don't even know we thought something. We don't even know what the words are that we're saying to ourselves because we just go into reaction mode. So in the book Crucial Conversations, and I have links that we'll send you later to some of these books that I mentioned, it's mentioned some tools for talking to others and to ourselves when the stakes are high. And they offer to first start with our hearts. What is it? What's our intention? Like I said earlier, do I want to be right or do I want to be happy? And I kiddingly say, well, it makes me happy to be right. So it's hard for me to distinguish the two, but they really are two different things. So I want you to think about how many times we say things and we cause unnecessary drama. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but I just thought I would say it now. So anyway, in the book Crucial Conversations, they offer to first start with the heart, to stick with our intention, and to remember that the only person we can directly control is ourselves. And another tool they speak of is stepping out of the situation, and we can only do that when we're silent, to make it safe, and to move into that silence or step out of the conversation to make it safe. When the safety is restored, then we can go to the issue at hand and continue the dialogue. I have a mentor that has worked for me for years to say nothing in that moment, and it is still a struggle for me because I think if I say something, then I'm going to fix it and I don't have to worry about it anymore. And sometimes that is the very last thing that happens and make it worse. So silence gives us a chance to understand our own stories, our own thoughts. What do we believe? And answer the question, do I need to be right? Why do I need to be right? Why do I need to prove this person wrong? And again, what would that do? What drama would that cause if I continue to push my point? Some people feel they have to defend themselves, and I understand that, especially when you're being unjustly accused. If you struggle with this, challenge yourself to keep silent when you would normally blurt something out or defend yourself. And the other circumstance, if you're silent and you don't say something, challenge yourself to say something. If your typical role or pattern of behavior is to be silent, try to say something. And if your typical role is to say something, try to be silent. I bet you'll feel better doing an opposite of something you're used to. I'm not saying do something, say something mean. I'm just saying try something new. Okay, this is the last slide. End gossiping. I'm not going to go into this because everybody knows that, right? I mean, in this slide it makes fun of it. It says we're not gossiping, we're networking. The mirror is a very important concept here, because when we are gossiping about somebody else, what does that say about ourselves? Because we're really speaking against ourselves, and this is what the author says. It is helpful to know what we have learned when someone spoke gossip about us. So think about 4 times when gossip has personally caused you pain, when maybe you said something that really wasn't true, or maybe somebody gossiped against you. Okay, I lied. This is the resource slide. It really is the last slide, so to speak of. Some things that help me are Daily Affirmations and Meditations by Louise Hay. Illuminata is a great book by Marianne Williamson. It has prayers in there. I love them. Loving What Is, I mentioned earlier, 4 steps to getting out of circumstances. Is it true? Who would I be? And then change it around. Do I really believe that? They said this. Why is it impacting me? Do I believe that about myself? I also recommend People Tech. It's a virtual leadership journey, and I can tell you it helped me tremendously. There's going to be a link to the Personal Bill of Rights. That's something you can say to yourself. There's some very, very good things in there. P3 South Florida. P3 stands for Personal Prosperity and Power. It's led by 2 mental health counselors in Delray. That's the link there. It's a weekend course. In fact, it's coming up next weekend. And it's great. Great life-changing experience. Crucial Conversations, Tools for Talking When Stakes Are High. The foreword is by Stephen Covey. This is an international group of consultants that got together and talked about communication tools. And finally, the 4 Agreement Companion Guide. I think that those are really good resources. Thank you for attending. I'm sorry we went late. I'm sorry we had a slow start and technical difficulties. Hopefully you can join us the second Tuesday of every month. We're going to have these January 10th at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to review the second agreement, don't take anything personally, and other fun stuff. The lines are unmuted, so if you have anything you want to say, please feel free to say anything. But other than that, thank you for attending.
Will you send out more information before each meeting? This is Deanna, by the way. Or will it just be the same dial-in?
Same dial-in, and I will send in more information, so yes to both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, you guys have a great, great holiday. Enjoy your time with your loved ones. Happy New Year, and I will talk to you in January. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Bye.